Hey guys, and welcome to another GameXplain discussion. I'm your host, Andre Seegers, and we're again joined by Derek Binder to discuss the latest screenshots from the past week for Super Smash Bros. Wii U and 3DS. So let's get right into it. Alright, Derek, well, after last week's, kind of disappointing screenshot selection, they came through this week with a bunch of really good screenshots, really. I think this might be, overall, like one of the best batches yet. Just really... Yeah, I mean, they just show off. I mean, nothing in any of them are super mind-blowing for the most part, but they all show off some cool new things that kind of suggest even more about the game. So let's start off with Monday, of course, and in this one, we see a picture of Mario standing in a this strange forest type thing, like this bioluminescent type area that appears to be like maybe either underground or just like in a really dark forest. And then Sakurai mentions that to be clear, he says, "Pick of the day, where am I? To be clear, the new Super Smash Bros. Games do not feature a story mode like the Subspace Emissary." So obviously I mean, to me, it's like he's hinting at the fact that this is from the single player component of the game, but it's not from the Subspace Emissary.
Well, to me, it's probably what we're probably going to get this time around is something much closer to the adventure mode from Melee,
right?
Which has had each character going through a set amount of levels, taking on things from those different types of games, and going from there. Because it's been a long time since I played the adventure mode in Melee, but I remember there being a Mario level, a level for Zelda where you fought a bunch of Redeads, stuff like that. So my gut tells me we're getting something like that. That's what this picture indicates. But I've racked my brain. I can't identify where this place is from at all.
Yeah, I mean, I did the same. I mean, the closest thing I could think of is it looks a little bit Metroid-esque. A little bit.
2D Metroids have never had a grassy field type area.
Well, I was thinking 3D Metroid, so...
Yeah, I guess it is possible for them to take 3D Metroid and 2Dify it for this sort of thing, but it's still... My first thought was that opening sequence from the reveal trailer where Mario jumps from the 3DS version into the Wii U version, and he jumps through this area this underground area that we have not seen yet. So this might be earlier in that level.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely thought that as well. Like the two, might be connected, if not, physically, directly. At least within the context of a single player mode or some kind of mode in the game. Because those are the two things we've seen so far that, as far as we can tell, have no link to any other franchise or anything we've seen before. It's very interesting, and I agree with you that I do, I think this very well could be from the story mode, or whatever they're going to call it in this, the adventure mode. It's interesting that, as far as we can tell, it's not based on any existing IP. So, I mean, in that sense, it actually does remind me more, despite what Sakurai says, of Subspace Emissary, which also had, as I recall, some generic areas, too, that you would go through.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wonder if it's maybe taking elements from that, because Sakurai before has mentioned that they're staying away from the cutscene-heavy focus of Subspace Emissary because they just end up on YouTube, and he doesn't like that for some reason. But that doesn't mean it still can't be like Subspace Emissary, just minus the cutscenes. Especially because, the Subspace Emissary really at its core was just a really elaborate version of, the adventure mode.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it really wasn't that unique. It was just longer, had more to it.
And unique enemies, that sort of thing.
Unique enemies, right, and had the super elaborate cutscenes. So who's to say that this isn't similar, just minus, the lavish production values?
What I'm sort of hoping for, looking at this, is that the biggest problem I had with Adventure Mode in Melee was that it got very repetitive doing with every single character.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, with Classic Mode for the single player, you could get through that pretty quickly without any major troubles. But Adventure Mode took a little time, and it was the same areas over and over again. So what I'm hoping for this Adventure Mode is to have each character maybe not have a completely unique adventure mode, but have same level, different level, same level, different level, and sort of pattern them more towards that character. That takes a bit more effort, of course, so maybe have more generic than that, but still spice it up a little bit by having each character be a little different, because I know myself, you get a trophy every time you complete adventure mode with a certain character. I want those trophies, so I'm going to do it. So spice it up for me, since I know I'm going to be doing this anyway.
Oh, dude, I think there's like a special place in hell for me, like where I'm stuck playing Smash Brothers single player for the rest of my life. Like, I feel like that is what, like, that will be my, like, that will be my undoing. Like, that will be, that'll be punishment.
Now, I don't think we'll see the return of the Primids. I think they're pretty much gone.
Those were the Brawl enemies?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I'm totally fine with that. I didn't care about them at all. Like, I didn't even, even Subspace Emissary, I didn't like. You know, I thought the cutscenes were awesome. Subspace Emissary was whatever. Like, I thought it was boring and dull. So I actually liked I like the adventure modes of the adventure mode of Melee far better than Subspace Emissary, except for the fact that it had co-op, which is cool for Subspace.
And I think they might keep the co-op in this case. I think they realized that was probably a good idea. Now, it'd be really cool if they could up that to 4-player co-op.
I can't think of any reason not to do it, particularly with all the experience they've had now with 4-player games like 3D World and New Super Mario Brothers. So yeah. Now there's only one other thing I wanted to note about the screenshot. I don't even know if it's noteworthy or not, but I did notice that you have the gap there, and then you have the 2 platforms there, presumably to help cross that gap. Even though it looks like you probably could just jump it too. So this seems, the structure is a little bit unusual for like a stage. So I think it might just add to the fact that this probably is from a single player component. Just because I don't think you'd see the structure normally in a level where you have like a gap and then platforms directly above, meant to cross that gap.
Yeah,
I could be mistaken, but
I think you have a point there, and you actually kind of drew my attention to something else. Is that the platform on the right feels more like an actual like fighting stage. For it seems like one of those things you continue along the level, you get to this point, and all of a sudden you have to fight an enemy.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, like you'll end up on like a little island or something.
Exactly. It's
right.
a little island, sort of like how in the adventure mode you get to that point and you'd have an enemy and you'd fight one of the other characters.
Yeah, that very well could be. It would make sense because you jump on the higher platform to like that little arena place and then you can't go back. Yeah.
So it's just a little bit more proof that it might be a little bit closer to the adventure mode.
Yep, I agree. So I suspect we'll see a lot more of that coming up, and I guess also the fact that it's on 3DS. If it is an adventure mode, it just shows that it will be at least in the 3DS version, and I'm guessing the Wii U is one as well. Now the question is, will they be different at all, or will they be the same? Because so far, both of these, both of the things we've seen that from the trailer and this were from the 3DS game. So
that's a good question. It's hard to say. I can see him, once again, I can see him doing it either way, because with the more portable focus of the 3DS, you could potentially have a quite different adventure mode.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, well, moving on. For Tuesday, we have a picture of Rosalina, which at first seems kind of uneventful. It's really nothing we hadn't seen before. But Sakurai expands upon the picture by saying, this is the Luma shot, which highlights the different ways to control your Luma. You can switch between controlling the Luma alongside Rosalina or away from her. And then he also mentions that it's a 15th anniversary for Smash Brothers, but that's, a side note. So this is, as far as I can tell, this is basically how we predicted she'd work in our analysis. Where, she had this move where you could shoot Luma out, and then he still mimics her movements, just at a further distance away.
Yeah, I think that pretty much clarifies how you're going to be controlling her, because now the question is like, do you use the same move to bring him back in? And that's how you control whether he's far away or close?
Well, yeah, that's a good one. In the trailer, we do see her when she's being carried by DK, summon the Luma back to her to attack DK.
Exactly.
So yeah, is that the same move, or is that something different, I'm guessing it's a separate move. Because if I remember correctly in our analysis, I think there are points where we see Luma even further out than just what one Luma shot would indicate. Where there seemed to be some significant gap between them. So I'm wondering if you can repeat the move to have Luma out, even further and further, and then you can summon him back if you want to, undo that whole thing.
Interesting. It's certainly possible. The thing is, without being in control of Rosalina or not seeing a full match with her, you can't. It's hard. It's been hard to get quite of a good sense of exactly how her and Luma work together.
Yeah,
it seems interesting. There's a lot of possibilities here, and I think we're narrowing down on it. But there's still a lot of questions.
Yeah, there are definitely some mysteries still left with this character, and I am really looking forward to getting my hands on with her. Wow, that sounded really perverted.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're a bit dirty there, right there, Andre.
All right.
I could direct you a couple 4chan boards.
Oh, no, let's not do that. We're a family-friendly channel, Derek.
Yes, we are. But it's odd. I've seen a lot of people complain that this was the only, like, really, this is all we get for the 15th anniversary? It's a little weird, especially, that's the day of it, so why wouldn't we get something a little bit more involved?
Yeah.
I mean, I understand he only wants to reveal so much, but something even simple. I think even before this I mentioned, like, just show off Final Destination. We haven't seen Final Destination yet, and I'm sure people are curious about that.
Yeah, we know it's going to be in the game, so yeah, why not just show it off? I do think it's funny that he mentions that there may be some players out there who played on the Nintendo 64 as kids and are now adults. I think that describes us. Like, yeah, I was in 8th grade when the first one came out.
Yeah. I think that describes me pretty well.
Yeah, and look at us. We haven't changed a bit.
Here's the crazy thing. There's teenagers out there that weren't even born
when this
game first came out.
Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. It's horrible. All right.
Just something to make us feel old.
Well, I think it's time to move on to the next screenshot, so before I depress myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for Wednesday's screenshot, at first it seemed like nothing. Like, it didn't seem like anything was happening here. We see Link grabbing a ledge and Mario being thrown, but apparently he, being attacked or reeling, from being attacked. But then Sakurai mentions there are many changes being made to attack and defense options for grabbing ledges. In this case, Link is actually trumping Mario's grab. And then he actually went on to mention a few other things, which I'll get to in a moment. But that actually adds so much more to this picture at first glance. So what this means is, like, apparently you can actually steal ledges from other people now. Because how it worked before is if you grabbed a ledge, you were, that ledge is yours. Anyone else trying to grab it, they were screwed. And that was actually like a strategy used during battle. Someone was coming back from battle, you go in to grab the ledge, and then they can't grab it. And they just fall to their death, assuming, they can't reach the platform itself. So that's kind of a big change, and has some, I think it might, have some deep ramifications for how the game's actually played. What are your thoughts on this? This
might be the biggest indicator that they're really focusing on how they want to balance the game. I was terrible at edge guarding. I could never quite figure out how to get myself to fall off but still grab the ledge.
Right.
And I would just I'd either go careening off the entire way or something like that. So, yes, maybe I'm a terrible player, but I never had to, because of my group of friends, I never really had to learn how to do that.
Right.
So, but yeah, as far as balancing, that's a huge change. It'd be very interesting to see how, I guess, as Sakurai continues on with his other changes, that's what determines who has priority. And
that's really the question. Is how does this work? Like, is there a priority? Because he mentions in this picture Link is actually trumping Mario's grab, but I don't think I think that may not actually indicate a priority. I think it's just literally describing what's happening in the screenshot. So but that is. The question is, how is this going to work? Like, is it something only certain characters can do? Because Link is one of the unique characters in that he can grab the ledge in a couple of different ways. He can grab it like most people can, just by latching onto it, or he can use his hook shot to grab it from a distance. Now in Brawl, I forget how effective it was in Melee. In Brawl, like those, as far as I can tell or remember, like those, I forget what they called them in the game, but his hook shot and Samus's beam to grab the ledge are basically worthless. Like they had no effect. So now if that's what he's using here, if that's what allows him to steal the ledge from someone else, I could see that lending him a pretty significant advantage over other characters now. And I wonder if that might mean that they're going to add similar ledge grabs to other people in the game, where they can also grab at a distance. But maybe that's not the case at all. Maybe he's just straight up, maybe it's a new move he has, or a new move every character has, where they can, either attack or, I don't know how this is going to work exactly. So
it might also determine, like I said, it might not even be just character based. It might just be based on who has the who has less percentage built up on them.
Yeah, that
has the priority.
That's an interesting idea. That would be an interesting way of going about it. Actually, factoring the relative, damage amounts into the gameplay, which isn't something they've done in that sense before. But speaking of damage percents, Sakurai commented on this picture with a few new details that are pretty interesting to me. So he mentions that the airtime and accumulated damage will determine your period of invincibility while hanging on an edge. And then he also mentions that grab controls will no longer be affected by whether you have above or below 100% damage. So these are two very interesting things. So first, now, I actually don't even remember if I realized this. I mean, it's been actually a little while since I've played Brawl now. I used to play a ton, back a few years ago, especially when I worked at IGN. But apparently, when your damage percent is above or below 100%, when you're hanging on a ledge and you choose to come back, whether it's just by rolling back onto the platform or attacking, the amount of time it takes is dependent on how high your damage is. If your damage count is higher when you come back from a ledge, if you attack, you'll be slower. But apparently, your attack's more powerful. Whereas if you're below 100%, it's faster but weaker. I don't know if I actually realized that before, or consciously at least, and that's kind of interesting. So they're taking that away. So now, no matter what damage percent you come back at, you'll always have the same speed and presumably attack, coming back. And that's kind of, I mean, that sounds like a pretty, I mean, again, it gets back to your balancing thing. It sounds like they are really going back and rethinking how they balance this game. And now they're making it easier to come back at higher percentages, basically. Like, no longer, because before it was kind of a disadvantage coming back at higher percent, and now they're kind of undoing that and making it so you have a better chance of getting back, it seems.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I never realized there was that difference when you grabbed a ledge, because, I got on a ledge, I'm getting back on there as soon as possible, right. So I really wasn't focusing. I was paying attention to whoever I was fighting and making sure I wasn't, in the way or doing what I needed to do. So I never consciously realized there was that sort of difference. And the fact that they're taken away now really doesn't affect us, but it does go back to that balancing of what, how higher level play is going to be handled from now on.
And, and I think the biggest factor that's going to factor into this, at least from what I can gather, is the other change you mentioned, which I read before, but the airtime and accumulated damage determining your period of invincibility while hanging on an edge. Because when you first grab an edge, you're invincible for a short period of time. And that, as far as I know, was always a set amount, regardless of what character you were, how long you were in the air, how much damage you had. It was always the same. And so people, so that factored into, edge guarding, where as I mentioned, you could just grab the ledge and prevent someone else from grabbing it. And as part of that, what you could do is you could just grab the ledge, until you, for the invincibility period. Then once that was up, just drop off of it, then just hop back up to the ledge, so you're invincible again, and you could just basically hog the entire ledge. So again, at lower levels of play, that's less of a factor. But at higher levels of play, this is, that was a big factor. And by changing that, this could have deep, really big ramifications for how I mean, really, edge guarding and the edge play of the game was a huge part of the game, and it sounds like they're really going to drastically change that. Now, my question is, which way is the airtime and accumulated damage going to affect your invincibility? But I could see it going both ways. Is being in the air longer and having higher damage going to mean you're invincible longer? Because presumably you're pretty damaged at that point. If you're in the air for a while and you got high damage, you're hurting. So it would make sense to lend you an advantage. Make you invincible for even longer when you come back. That way you have a better chance of getting back. Adding some like Mario Kart style of balancing. Kind of make it, trying to, if you've taken damage, make it, give you a fighting chance of getting back in. But, I can see that also upsetting a lot of, competitive players who wouldn't want to see that kind of advantage necessarily. And that might also play against. So I mean, I'm wondering also like if maybe it goes the other way. So like if you've just been knocked off the ledge, maybe then you have more invincibility. Because you shouldn't die at that point. Like if you're like at 20% get knocked off, like you're still a baby in terms of smash time. So maybe you would be more invincible then. I don't know. I'm not sure.
See, I never even thought about that. I just always, as soon as I heard this, I just sort of assumed like, okay, if you're more damaged, you have more invincibility, because that's just a mode that's just the thing that made more sense to me.
Right.
But you're right. They really could go either way. Either they could either reward the players who are good, or they could help the players that aren't doing as good.
Right.
And I think personally, for me, I'd like to see them help the players that aren't doing quite as good.
Yeah.
Because it makes for a more thrilling match.
Yeah.
You have those chances of comebacks and switch arounds and changes, because that's, I've watched a few Smash tournaments, and it's always exciting when the guy who's gotten beat up all of a sudden makes this amazing comeback despite having how much percentage damage on him, and how many more stocks the guy has over him. So in my mind, they want to encourage that, but it could just as easily be the other way around. It's hard to say which way they'll favor.
Yeah, that's entirely the case. And I'm also wondering too, because he mentions there's two factors, the damage and airtime. And I'm wondering, like, how that's going to be weighted. How are those going to, will one have more priority? Will they, can they cancel each other out? Like, I have no idea what he means by that exactly. Because, I can also see the airtime factoring in. Like, for instance, with the edge guarding I mentioned, where you just grab the ledge, drop off, grab the ledge again, just, stay invincible. I can see the airtime then factoring in then. Because if you drop off, you're going to be in the air for, like, I don't know, like a second and most before you hop back onto the ledge. So I can see it working then, like if you're in the air for no time at all, it's going to grant you like almost no invincibility when you grab onto that ledge. And that way, that would prevent people from doing that. That way you're no longer invincible, you can no longer edge hog if you just keep dropping off and re-grabbing it. And that would work, that would work in tandem with characters being able to steal the ledge back and just really change that aspect of the game.
Yeah, that makes sense too, with how they would handle that. But it also is like, when as far as like, how do they calculate airtime? Is it just because of being knocked back? Or for characters like Kirby and Dedede, who can float, even Pin, I guess, does the recovery time... So Kirby, theoretically, I could just jump in the air for a set amount of time while the other guy tries to get back and then grab the ledge to have that invincibility.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good one. I don't know how they're going to... Yeah, I don't know exactly how it's going to factor in, because you're right. Some characters have insane air times. And like Rob, for instance, or Meta Knight even, and I kind of feel like maybe they're also part of the reasons why they're rebalancing it, because with those characters, their aerial abilities like lend them some huge advantages. So I'm wondering if that's also going to be a factor in how they balance this. Yeah, I'm just really curious to see like what they mean by this, and it was really cool actually to see Sakurai kind of dive into some deeper play strategy or deeper play mechanics. Because we haven't seen that before from him, at least in these Miiverse posts. And it's not only is it good to see him taking these into account, but it is cool to see him just sharing these details. And I actually hope we see more details like that in future, in future Smash posts.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating to see how exactly he's going about rebalancing the game.
Right. Okay, well I think that pretty much what covers for that screenshot. So let's move on to Thursday, which again shows off the Kid Icarus arena from Uprising that we've seen before, and I think only in screenshots. I don't think we've seen it in motion yet. No,
it's only been screenshots so far.
The thing to take away from this is that we see, I think her name's Viridi.
Yeah, Viridi.
Viridi. Yeah, we see her in the background, and that's interesting for a couple of reasons. One, it just shows that she is going to be a factor in this. I think she was a factor in the, we knew she was a factor in the, the chapter that this is based on with Kid Icarus.
Yeah, because it's her reset bomb,
right,
that we saw in the background in the previous screenshot.
Right. So now we know that she will appear here, perhaps before she unleashes an attack. So maybe she preempts, or she comes right before like one of those reset bombs, maybe. That we're still not sure how this is going to affect the gameplay, if they do at all. They could just be a background detail. But it is cool to see her appear, and presumably she's going to be... I mean, it's hard to tell from the screenshot. To me, it looks like she's huge and just really far off in the distance. As opposed to right behind that wall and really, not that big.
No, I think she's huge enough in the distance, because that's how they did, a lot of these other characters like Medusa and whatnot.
Right.
And, that just sort of makes sense for the series. I don't know, the first time I saw this, when I first saw this screenshot, I'm like, I think think Sakurai's trolling us a bit.
Yeah, so the timing is completely, like, either one of those coincidental things of all time, or he's playing with us, which I think that has to be it. Because this came the day after the supposed leak of Palutena. Yeah, where, with the 3DS screenshots of her being a new character. And then they show off this new screenshot from Kid Icarus Uprising, showing off a new character we haven't seen before. I mean, not in a playable sense, but in a at least the background sense. So I feel like this is his nod, like not really confirming either way, but acknowledging the situation. And I do think it's interesting that this confirms that background characters don't have an outline. Like, only the playable characters will have the black border around them, but she doesn't. Yeah. Which I don't know if that's a hint too. At Palutena, being, that will confirm that if those screenshots were leaks, that does mean that she's a character and not, probably not she's not a background character and probably not an assist trophy.
Yeah, there's a lot of things you can sort of extrapolate from this picture. She's definitely a background detailer. She's not a character. It doesn't seem, based on the fact that it's in this level in particular, it's highly unlikely that she's a assist trophy either. Mm-hmm. So this is definitely a background element.
Right.
The big question I have for this is, can she interact with the foreground at all, or is it going to be one of those things like in the Star Fox stage in Brawl, or the Metal Gear Solid stage in Brawl, where there's just these characters in the background and they affect the stage a little bit. Like in Metal Gear Solid's case, they break the background, you can see different types of Metal Gears.
Right.
But they didn't say they would sort of affect the stage, but not the layout at all.
Right.
And I'm curious if they're going to change that though, so she's the same way, or if she's going to actually affect the stage somehow. And maybe the way she does affect it is setting off the reset bomb directly. So maybe that's your visual cue that this is about to happen.
Yeah, that's really the question, and yeah, we're not going to know until we see it in motion. So, or play it for ourselves, of course.
Yeah.
Unless, or if he just straight up says it, which he might at some point. Alright, so that wraps it up for Thursday screenshots. Let's move on to the final one, which also is pretty interesting. This one we see a picture of the Spirit Tracks, arena, being, where you're riding the train. And Sakurai, elaborates on that, saying, when Toon Link joins a battle, Alfonzo is in charge of the train. Then Alfonzo is apparently saying, leave it to me. So this is kind of unusual because before we were commenting on how on if background characters could appear in the same form as a primary playable character, and we specifically mentioned this arena. But the thing is, technically, even though Toon Link is in the game and you can have the Spirit Tracks link there, they're not the same character because they're different links from different generations. So it's surprising that they're doing this kind of detail. That they are, if you're playing as Toon Link, that they replace it from, if you're playing as the Wind Waker Toon Link, that they remove the Spirit Tracks Toon Link. It's a cool little detail. It's an unnecessary detail, but I wonder if they did it just to avoid confusion, maybe? If you somehow got confused with the Toon Link, the Spirit Tracks Toon Link being there?
That'd be my guess. Just avoid confusion, because as you said, they're not the same link, so they could theoretically still pop up in the same place.
Right.
But if looking at how close he is to Alfonzo there, it does seem like you could very easily, I know they're dressed differently, but this could also put a favor in, maybe you can put Link in his train outfit.
Oh, yeah.
So they wouldn't want to confuse him that way.
That's true.
Because his train outfit is pretty much exactly like Alfonso's, very brown, a little bit of a, just, it's quite different from his, adventuring outfit. So theoretically, you couldn't get it mixed up, but we're also working with the 3DS with the smaller screen, so you don't want to take any chances with that sort of thing. So it makes sense that they would do something like that.
Perhaps most disappointingly, it confirms that Alfonso's not a playable character, unless there's a third character that comes into play when you have both of them in the arena.
Yeah, I don't think anybody was claiming for Alfonso.
I don't think anyone cares. However, I just realized this completely contradicts what we just said in the previous screenshot.
I was gonna mention that as well. Yep. The black outline on Alfonso.
He's got a black outline.
Yep. So your theory there is shot.
Yeah, so so everything I said about that, just do away with it. So that's interesting, actually. So I wonder if it's more of a background foreground type thing, because he's obviously closer to being part of the arena than, or being in the foreground than what's her name? Viridi was in Kid Icarus.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it means anything. I don't know if that means if he might have any impact on the battle itself, or if he's just purely for background again. But that is unusual. Like, I am surprised that they are doing that. That they does have that black outline. So I guess that is what they're doing, for just to be consistent with any characters in the foreground, maybe, or
it's probably just for consistency's sake. If I had to guess any reason why, honestly, yeah, it has to be just consistency, because you still want these characters to pop, and you want a background character to pop, so you just stay away, or that they're not part of the action. I don't know. I'm not an art guy, so I don't know the reason, but yeah, it just sort of confirms that other characters will have the black outlines. So maybe assist trophies do have black outlines. So
I guess that's still a mystery. And I just checked too, just to see if Spirit Tracks had the black outlines in general, because then it would make sense to have it as like a general, visual appearance for the level. And no, it didn't. So it seems that background characters, will just share the same black outlines. I think there was. Oh no! I think actually the most important part about this is the first time that, as far as I know, that characters have a direct influence on the stage itself. Or which characters you choose. The closest thing I can think of is some of the Easter eggs we had in Millennium Brawl. Like, whereas if you play it as like Star Fox, I think, or Falco in the Star Fox level, you could have the Star Fox conversations, where you could radio in and they would talk to each other, or Snake in the Metal Gear arena, where you could have the Kodak conversations. But those are all like little Easter eggs. Maybe this is along the same lines, but this is the first time we've seen something that actually changes the appearance of a level, without having to activate a separate Easter egg. So I wonder if there might be more things like that in the game, or if this just is a one-time thing to account for this, bizarre possibility that you could play as two very similar-looking Links, but are still different Links.
Yeah, I guess the best idea to check it would be not even just a check, but let's say Big Blue from Melee. Check and see if Captain Falcon's ship is in the race. Right.
Yeah. There you go. Because it will make sense for it not to be if you're playing as Captain Falcon.
You can explain the way the Great Falcon being there just by autopilot, but I don't think autopilot's going to work for that the main race.
Yeah, not much of a race. Everyone's just playing autopilot, huh?
Yeah.
All right, I think that wraps up for our Smash Brothers weekly conversation or discussion. So thanks guys for watching. If you like this video, make sure to follow us and like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. You can find links to them in the description below. It's a good way to keep up to date with everything we post. And of course, keep an eye on GameXplain.com for more on Smash Brothers, Wii U, and 3DS and other things gaming as well. Alright, thanks for watching guys. Bye.